All of a sudden, I got cameras on me, and I just literally was a deer in the headlights. Fans hanging off the windscreen wipers on the front of the tour bus. We were just trying to get out, surrounded by my absolute heroes, and completely out of my depth.
He has given us some of the biggest and best songs of the decade, without doubt. Such a privilege to welcome Nik Kershaw. Good morning.
Good morning, Simon. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, excellent. Excellent.
We've got loads to talk to you about. Obviously, the tour starts in just a few weeks' time. It's called 1984. This is the year that everything went crazy for you.
Yeah.
These two albums, Human Racing and The Riddle, are huge albums. The number of hits on these albums is vast. So it's a kind of, even though it's just those two albums, it is a bit of a greatest hits show in some ways, isn't it?
It is kind of, which is kind of handy because we know those songs.
Yeah, you've done those a few times.
We've done those before. So we should be up to speed on those, yeah.
But you must have had quite a confidence. I mean, for it to become then a career, because this is not what they talk about at school in the careers office, is it? Go and be a musician. So you must have had quite a confidence of, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, confidence or naivety or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I remember having that conversation with my careers teacher.
Yeah. And they said?
They said, yeah, don't do that, Kershaw. And then I ended up flunking out halfway through my A-levels in order to, earn some money, get a van, chuck the band on it and go off and rule the world. But so I ended up working in an unemployment benefit office for 3 years.
So what's the time gap between that and then you getting a record deal as a solo artist?
Didn't get a record deal till 1982, end of 1982, 83. So yeah, I would have been sort of 24 by then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you then release, first single is Where Let the Sun Go Down on Me.
Yeah.
Which does okay, like particularly in 1983 terms, it does well. But wouldn't it be good, and we're going to play this in just a second, that really lights the touch paper. Yeah. Can you just talk us through this song? How did it come about in terms of writing it? What is it about it that made it suddenly change for you?
It was the last song on the album. We were already recording the album. And I remember I was living in a sort of a farmer's cottage in the middle of the Essex countryside. And this tune came into my head. The chorus tune. And I made some kind of very, very basic demo. I couldn't get the lyric right. In actual fact, I never thought I got the lyric right. It was originally "Wouldn't It Be Nice?" And then the A&R bloke said, "Well, it's a bit nice, isn't it? Well, about wouldn't it be good?" Okay, so it was "Wouldn't It Be Good?" I think it really grew in the studio because I wasn't sure about when I first wrote. I think, well, it's a good tune, but it just kind of grew and it became this sort of magnificent thing. Every overdub we put on it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was the one track that, when we had session musicians come in to play on it, that was the one that everybody kind of pointed out and said, "Wow, that's got to be the first single." And of course, it wasn't, but it was the single that did the trick, certainly.
And tell us about your first Top of the Pops, because I sort of think for artists, when they go on a show like that, which let's not forget was getting 14, 15 million audience at the time.
Yeah.
I would have thought, one, that's petrifying, but for you, you're on your own. There's no band behind you. It literally is just you and a keyboard at the side.
Yeah, it was but we didn't really know what to do with me at that point. And I think it was my second TV appearance, the first one being Pebble Mill at 1.
Oh, remember that? Yeah.
Remember that one. So I really hadn't got the hang of. I mean, before I just used to be the guitar player in a band, so I just stood at the back and minded my own business. But all of a sudden, I got cameras on me, and I just literally was a deer in the headlights. So I didn't know what to do with myself. But I do remember that day, getting to the studio and getting pulled over by the police because I jumped some traffic lights in Walthamstow.
What, in a rush?
Yeah, well, I had a hire car and I thought, I didn't really know where I was going, and I was in a bit of a panic. So I jumped these. I only just jumped them. But yeah,
I'd like to point out, officer.
Yeah, I'd like to point out, officer.
Yeah,
it didn't make a difference. And then he asked me where I was going, and I had to tell him. And he was a bit suspicious. But yeah, and getting to the studio, and the same thing everybody says, because it was in a TV centre. Then it moves after that, and how small the studio was, and the fact that all these hundreds of fans that you thought were in the studio, there was about 20 of them being shepherded about.
You love a snood and a fingerless glove. I mean, that's all good.
Well, that wasn't necessarily my decision either. That was kind of that was all kind of I had no idea whatsoever how I was supposed to look or be, or I had to be. Yeah, I had a stylist. I was styled within an inch of my life.
You, at this point, are kind of propelled into fame at quite a high level. You've got the screaming girls, you've got the fans that just adore you. And all of your songs, like for the next sort of 2 years, all of your songs are going top 20, top 10. What was that like for you? And I think like we had Tony Hadley on the show not long ago, and he had the whole thing of fans climbing up a drain pipe trying to get in the window of the dressing room where they were, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What was your experience of that?
There are a few moments like that. There was, I remember people on a tour bus, fans hanging off the windscreen wipers on the front of the tour bus. We were just trying to get out. I mean, it's really dangerous.
Terrifying.
Quite a lot of the time. And security people trying to get people out of the way. And thinking, what's going on? Literally, it happens almost overnight. It was within weeks. I went from not being able to get arrested, even for jumping traffic lights, to like not being able to go out without a bodyguard or a silly disguise. Yeah.
Did you like it? Because this is obviously something that you dreamt of in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was very confusing. It was quite bewildering. Obviously, it was brilliant. I was living my dream, but at the same time, completely terrifying because you weren't in control of anything.
And then you're right in the middle of this sort of wild ride, and they come to you and go, look, I know the first album has done really well. Could you do another one for us? Which is kind of unheard of, really. You don't get that much, even nowadays, where they say we want 2 albums in a year.
Yeah.
How did you do that? How long did you have?
We had one song kind of left over from the previous album, so I literally had 2 weeks to write 9 songs.
Goodness me. But these were great. I mean, think of the songs on the album. They're great.
Yeah.
The Riddle and Don Quixote, and these are really strong songs. So what's your songwriting method? Is it quite methodical, or did they just come to you? You said earlier you had a melody in your head at night one night.
Yeah, it was literally. I mean, I think there's something to be said for having a huge amount of success very fast. That there was, it gave you a huge amount of creative energy and confidence in your own decision making. So every idea that comes in your head, you go, "Yeah, that's great. I'm going to go with that." So there was never kind of, "Oh, I don't know," or days of pondering a particular idea.
You haven't got time. Have you?
You haven't got time. It just comes to you, and you've got so full of confidence. You just get on with it.
We've got to talk about Live Aid, because we've got to put this in context that actually that came about, what are we talking, 18, 19 months after this all exploded for you. So still relatively early days, really, and yet you're there on Wembley Stadium with, I'm guessing, your idols, really.
Absolutely.
What are your memories of that day?
The fear was one, but fortunately that was over quite quickly. I was on about 2:30, something like that, so I could relax and enjoy the rest of the day. But yeah, surrounded by my absolute heroes, and completely out of my depth. And I think there were several people on that show that felt the same way. Hammered home by the fact that I remember watching Queen come on stage. I was sitting in the Royal Box and thinking, "Oh, okay, that's."
They've been doing it a while.
How you play in front of 80,000 people? Yeah. That was amazing. I remember there was one point at which Bowie dumped one song. He said, "I'm going to dump one song. I'm going to leave the stage early, and we're going to show the original Michael Butt."
Yes, the Cars and Drive, yeah.
Yeah, and then that song came on, and then the whole place went quiet, and everybody went, "Oh, okay, this is why we're here."
Yeah. And you've been quite open about the fact that you forgot your words in your performance. But again, watching it, you would not have a clue.
Yeah.
So I guess this is just an internal argument you had going. I mean, it's a horrible thing when your mind just goes blank.
This is my alter ego that sits on my shoulders and tells me that I'm rubbish and things like that. And he turns up all the wrong times. And he turned up at the beginning of the second verse of "Wouldn't It Be Good?" and to say, "You don't know the words to the end of this verse, do you?" So you've got that internal conversation going on whilst you're singing and trying to perform at that time. And I didn't watch it for years and years and years and years. But when the 10th anniversary happened, and they were bringing out a DVD, I had to kind of watch it, and I would sort of watch it through my fingers and looking for the fear in my eyes, and it wasn't there. I couldn't see it. No. It was just, I ended up singing a bit of the first verse again. And of course, nobody noticed. But yeah, I genuinely couldn't see all that turmoil going on.
Well, you covered it up brilliantly. Such a good performance. Listen, Nick, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for your time. Nik Kershaw, the 1984 tour. It celebrates human racing and the riddle. Starts in Lincoln on October 3rd and heading right across the UK. Have an amazing tour. And thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Simon. Absolute pleasure.
This is Heart.